Well, there were 22 votes in favor of the budget. I think I'm going to look at the glass as 88% full rather than 12% empty like you did. So, I'm very pleased that the budget passed. It was a very difficult budget process. Let's go back to where we started with a huge hole in the transit budget and lots of pressures right across the board. And yet we were able to find solutions. We found over the last 2 years, more than $200 million in savings and efficiencies that have saved our residents lots of money, $400 or more per household. So I think it's a very good outcome given the financial pressures we've been facing. But the reality is municipalities are facing significant pressures. We are not going to be able to sustain the services we offer to our residents without proper support from other levels of government. The world has changed significantly since the system of government that we operate was created at the time of Confederation. We're 150, 160 years on from that, and the challenges that we are required to solve in our community were not even conceived of at the time of Confederation. So other levels of government expect us to resolve issues across the spectrum, and we need the resources to do that. So that conversation has to continue for municipalities across Canada, and it has to continue in particular for the unique challenges that Ottawa faces as Canada's capital, as Ontario's second largest city, and as a city that doesn't receive the same level of funding as other municipalities.
So it's been 4 months since you did the Fairness for Ottawa campaign, and as the budget was approaching, you still don't seem to be any closer to getting money from the federal and provincial governments. Are you making headway?
I think we're closer, but I'm not counting on anything until we cross the finish line. I've had positive signs from both levels of government. Everything in government takes time, I'm discovering. That wasn't my experience in the private sector, but working with the other levels of government, it takes time. So I remain hopeful, but I think they both understand the pressure we're under, and that if there are not resources coming our way to support public transit in the next couple of months, we're going to have to face some very tough decisions as a community. And we will be pointing out to our residents that the reason we face those tough decisions is we did not get the help we needed from other levels of government.
Good.
Thank you. We will go back to Frédéric Papin, Radio-Canada.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Donc, parlez-nous, je pense qu'on a entendu un peu aujourd'hui ce qui pourrait arriver si justement vous n'avez pas l'argent dont vous souhaitez de la part du fédéral et de la province. Qu'est-ce que vous dites aux gens à la maison? Qu'est-ce qui arrive si il n'y a pas de bonnes nouvelles? Comme là, on sait qu'il y a un budget qui est proposé, qui est adopté, mais qu'est-ce qui pourrait arriver dans les prochains mois? Est-ce que ce budget-là, il va falloir...
Je ne sais pas encore parce que, encore une fois, je souhaite que les autres niveaux de gouvernement vont faire leur juste part et vont faire ce qu'il faut pour nous aider. Alors, je pense qu'il y aura des solutions dans les semaines suivantes, mais sinon, nous aurions des décisions difficiles et il y aura une situation très, très difficile pour la ville. Et je pense que tout sera sur la table pour peut-être une augmentation des impôts, une augmentation des tarifs. Je ne sais pas, parce que sans le 36 millions de dollars des autres niveaux de gouvernement, il y aura un déficit dans notre budget et ce n'est pas possible d'avoir un déficit dans un budget municipal, même si c'est possible aux autres niveaux de gouvernement.
Peut-être une question pour vous, Mme Amilcar, si vous me permettez, Monsieur le maire. Mme Amilcar, vous avez été sur un hot seat aujourd'hui. Je pense que c'est un bon terme en anglais qu'on peut comprendre. Il y a eu des questions difficiles de la part du conseiller Brockington, entre autres. On lui a demandé s'il remettait en question votre leadership. Il a dit non. Il a dit qu'il ne remet pas en question. Mais quel est le message que vous recevez de ces questions qui étaient difficiles sur les autobus, la ponctualité, mais aussi le service en général qui est offert à la population?
C'est une attaque qui est un petit peu personnelle aujourd'hui, mais je vais rester focus pour faire ce que je sais faire le mieux au monde, c'est-à-dire travailler avec mes équipes de manière à ce qu'on puisse offrir aux résidents d'Ottawa un meilleur système de transport. Et ce que je retiens de cette attaque personnelle, c'est que j'ai encore du travail à faire pour vulgariser le travail qui est nécessaire ici à Ottawa afin qu'on ait vraiment les résultats escomptés. Sure. So it was a personal attack, and I'm going to stay focused with my team to do what I love the best, which is deliver a good service for Ottavian resident. And I think as well that I will need to take it as maybe a good advice that I need to explain better what we need to do to be able to improve the service here in Ottawa.
Can I add something to that? I just want to say that, it's clear that people have very strong opinions about public transit because it's so important. It's one of the most important services we provide to the public. It's one of the most expensive services that we provide to the public. We're investing deeply in public transit. So it's understandable that people have questions and a wide range of opinions. But I think as much as we are examining the budget from every angle and we faced a lot of challenges with public transit, with the light rail system over the last few years. No question about that. I understand the frustration in the community. I understand the frustration around the council table. I think we have to also look at the progress we're making, the progress the team at OC Transpo is making on building a better service for residents, making decisions that are responding to the needs of transit users for the future, for the post-pandemic future. We're about to launch another line of light rail. That's going to be a historic moment. Hopefully within a year or so, we'll be launching the East End extension of Line 1. So there are big milestones ahead that we can look forward to. And the goal remains to build a public transit system for our community that our residents believe in and trust and can use. We're seeing ridership continuing to grow from where it was after the pandemic. So there's progress being made. I understand the frustration, but we also have to acknowledge that progress is being made by OC Transpo.
We will now go to Sean Varden, CTV Ottawa.
The mic can walk over to you, though.
Yeah, the mic can come over to me. Thank you. Okay. Is it
Get
a
that.
win for the city to pass a budget without knowing you have the funding to fully fund it, like from the feds and from the province?
It's the right and responsible thing to do because we deserve that funding from the other levels of government. The province and the federal government have been investing in transit in places like Toronto and Hamilton and Mississauga and Brampton in ways that they have not invested in Ottawa. So we deserve the same level of support as other Ontario cities, and I believe we will get investment from other levels of government. So we'll move forward and we'll wait to hear from the other levels of government. The conversations are continuing. I've spoken to both levels of government in the last couple of days alone. So we're making progress. We'll see where we get to, but this is the right and responsible thing to do because otherwise we would have to add to the burden of local taxpayers and local transit users who are already paying more than their fair share of the cost of public transit because we don't get the same investment as other cities.
And, excuse me, going forward next year, obviously the budget is going to be more difficult. You found $200 million in savings this year. You're probably hoping to get money from the feds and the province. I mean, are we falling behind at this point? And going down the road, are we going to have to do a lot more to make things work?
I think we're making a lot of historic investments in this budget. So if you look at the budget, we are investing an additional 11% in public transit. We're increasing the transit budget by a historic amount of money. We're investing in public safety. We're hiring more police officers and firefighters and paramedics. We're investing in fixing roads and sidewalks in our community, adding more dollars to do that. We're investing in supporting the most vulnerable. We're investing in a whole bunch of different areas. So this is not a budget where we're cutting back, where we're scrimping and saving. This is a budget where we have established some very clear priorities, the priorities that matter most to our residents, and we're investing in those areas.
Thank you. We will now go to Arthur White-Crummy, CBC Ottawa. Merci, Fred.
Oh, thanks.
Il n'y a
So
pas,
I'm
il n'y a
gonna-
pas You pay pour, wait,
Get a city salary.
you don't get a
for
check for this.
that.
Brett.
I'd like to begin with a highly technical question for Cyril Rogers relating to the fuel hedging. I just wanted to get a little bit more clarity on exactly how you found this money. When I first read it, it almost sounded like an accounting trick, but I get there might be more to it. And just how much was in that pot? Where did it come from?
Certainly wasn't an accounting trick. So as I spoke about before throughout different committees, so in 2024, we had our fuel hedging contract. So we do enter into contracts in the market where we prepay for a fuel price. So we lock in. We don't lock in 100%. We kind of have a little bit of a rolling window of how much we lock in per cycle. In 2024 budget, our price rate was at $1.36. When we started the budget process in September timeframe, the price of oil in a barrel was around $75, $77 a barrel. And that's where our contracts were falling around more like $1.44. Even at that point in October, there was a lot of uncertainty in the global economic sector. Fuel is probably one of the most volatile commodities out there, influenced by political decisions south of the border and unrest, globally. So in recent months or recent weeks, the price of oil is now coming down to about 67 per barrel, and we can actually get better pricing. So right now our contracts are around $1.40. So as opposed to $1.44, we're now able to lock in at $1.40. So that's where that savings is coming from.
And what's the total for that?
So it's 1.9. You saw 1.5 on the transit side, because obviously transit is the biggest user of our diesel. And then on the city side, it was about $400K.
Great. And now for the mayor, a somewhat broader question. Putting aside transit, the budget that you passed looks pretty similar to the draft budget we got in November. I'm just wondering, after all the committee meetings, all the delegates that showed up, all the public engagement sessions that councillors did with residents, like, what does it say about governance in the city that the only changes are worth about $400,000 in a budget of $6.5 billion?
The budget process is not just the last month. So we're constantly talking to residents about their needs and their priorities. And when you look at the investments that we're making, some of them have been months and years in the development. So for example, we're investing in a new community center in Riverside South. We're investing in fixing up the Alexander Community Center in River Ward. These are things that were not decided in the last couple of weeks. So the work that we do to respond to our residents' needs starts with the conversations we have going back to the last election and all the interactions we have with the community over the course of our time in office. So we're constantly talking to our residents and listening to what they have to say, understanding their priorities. We set priorities for the term of council. We make decisions about where we're investing. And the budget really is near the end of that process, where we make final decisions on how we will invest in the next year. And then there's a consultation process with the community. We listen to what they have to say, and we move forward. And I think you saw, examples of listening to the community on the transit side. You saw examples of it when it came to issues like food insecurity. So changes were made. I think a lot of the focus was on transit because it is such an important service and because we are facing such big challenges there. So I think the process was very strong. You saw a lot of discussion around the table today, a lot of questions, a lot of very strong comments and advocacy from councillors, and then a bunch of motions that by and large passed very smoothly without a lot of debate, with like confrontation, like some discussion, but not a lot of confrontation, and then a budget vote that was almost unanimous. So I think the process worked.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Arya Gunde, CHUO-FM.
Hi, my question is mainly towards Madam Amilcar. I know the draft budget has or the capital budget, there's $306 million allocated towards the zero emission bus program. And I understand that there's been delays in getting those buses. So I was just asking, when are we getting the electric buses and when are we getting the diesel fueled buses that the city is allocating as well?
So your question is when we will get them?
When and how many?
Okay, thanks for the question. So we received one e-bus, I think 2 weeks ago. We should receive 4 others this year. And if I'm not mistaken, we should receive 77 next year. And we are working with the vendor to make sure that we will be able to welcome those buses that we definitely need.
So then I assume the budget for next year, that program will be much lower in terms of the capital budget.
So it's not that simple. So the way that works, we buy buses, but we have to transform our garages. We have to put a lot of things around. So most of the things that we have already started, so you don't see them because we are preparing everything to welcome those buses. So the capital money, it as a whole, it's not only to see the buses. It's the engineering department. It's working with a lot of third parties to be able to put everything together so we can run those buses.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse.
Oh.
Oh, vas-y, Angela.
Ouais.
Oui.
Oui, parfait. Oups, je m'excuse, c'est très bas. Je voulais juste vous demander, en fait, qu'est-ce que vous comptez faire face aux critiques qui ont été portées à l'égard d'OC Transpo aujourd'hui? Là, on a parlé énormément de ponctualité. Il y a l'abordabilité aussi, mais particulièrement sur la question de ponctualité, qu'est-ce que vous comptez faire?
Comme je l'ai mentionné tout à l'heure, je pense que j'ai encore du travail à faire pour vulgariser mieux qu'est-ce que ça prend pour qu'on puisse arriver à nos fins. Et clairement, ce n'est pas des attaques personnelles qui vont changer quelque chose, mais c'est important de savoir où ce qu'on est, puis qu'est-ce qu'on doit faire, puis comment on va faire pour y arriver. Et c'est ce que j'ai entamé depuis que je suis ici, depuis 3 ans, c'est que j'ai emmené des indicateurs de performance pour éviter qu'on porte des jugements gratuits. Donc, on va parler de façon factuelle, et c'est ce que j'ai fait. Et j'ai mis en place aussi le barème. C'est où ce qu'on doit aller si on veut être un des meilleurs dans le monde. Donc, c'est ce que je vais continuer à faire avec les équipes. Puis, je pense que je vais continuer à vulgariser beaucoup. Puis, personnellement, je vais avoir une conversation avec le conseiller en question.
Mais sans parler des attaques personnelles, je me permets une relance, là, peut-être juste expliquer, vous parlez de ces barèmes, pouvez-vous expliquer un peu plus, là, c'est quoi le plan actuellement pour améliorer la ponctualité au niveau du transport?
Absolument. Oui. Donc, on a déjà embauché plus de 800 chauffeurs parce qu'on était vraiment en arriérage à cet effet-là. Donc, check, c'est fait. On a revu aussi tout notre réseau pour l'adapter avec la nouvelle façon que les gens ont décidé de voyager. Donc, ça, c'est fait. On va l'implanter en avril 2025. Et puis là, on a aussi mis en place un plan d'action pour adresser les problèmes de la maintenance. On sait qu'on a un parc vieillissant. 55% de notre parc est déjà dû pour être mis au rencard. Donc, on travaille sur ce plan d'action-là de manière à améliorer le service.
Merci. And maybe would you want just last question for you, Mayor, in English? Yeah. If you could explain, do you think it was a personal attack today that was aimed at Ms. Amilcar?
I'll leave that to Madame Amilcar. I would just reiterate that I think we have a lot to be proud of in terms of the progress that the team at OC Transpo is making, and we need to continue. Obviously, it's our responsibility to ask tough questions and hold the team at the city and at OC Transpo responsible for their mandate. But I think we also have to celebrate the progress that's being made and celebrate the achievements. And we're very close to a big moment where we'll finally have service on line 2 again. So that's an exciting moment, and there's a lot of hard work that has gone into that. So I think we need to focus on that.
Thanks, everyone. Merci.
Oui, j'ai beaucoup de confiance dans l'équipe OC Transpo. Oui, absolument.
Merci.
Oui.